All right, everybody, we are live. Good afternoon. My name is Alex Martinez from Creating Coding Careers, where we help aspiring developers transition to ServiceNow and software engineering roles. Today, we're going to be going over the experience paradox, or in other words, that difficulty of obtaining experience without first having the experience. And now more than ever, the competition is quite fierce and the barrier to entry continues to climb. A boot camp certificate or CS degree may not be enough. So how do we get that needed experience? Today, we're going to be covering over a few topics. One in particular is freelancing. Oh, and there's our CEO, Mike Roberts. Welcome, Mike. So I was just letting everybody know that we're going to go over the topic of freelancing as a possible way to get that experience that you need to solve this experience paradox. What do you think about the freelancing? Freelancing is a supplement to everyone's job search, especially in today's climate, Mike.
Hey, so my thoughts have evolved over time, right? So if you were to ask me maybe 2-3 years ago, should an early career person freelance? I would say hell no.
Yep.
And the reason why I'd say that is because there's a lot of challenges in the space, right? As a freelancer, the biggest one is like you have to go from being sort of focused on being a developer to also like being a business owner, right? And so you have to learn like how to do back office operations. How do you put together proposals? How do you pitch yourself? How do you make sure that the customers feel like they're getting good quality service? And like those are really hard skills to navigate and learn. And in addition to that, the other piece that I think a lot of people will mentally do that causes harm to their job search processes, they take their foot off the gas. They get so focused on freelancing and earning money now that they kind of like set aside how aggressive they were when they didn't have like another activity. And so they kind of like reduce the amount of time they spend on the job search. So in the past, I would say probably not a good idea. But I think now there are so many more tools available. There are so many more opportunities for you to be efficient with your time, even as an early career developer. You got things like Chat GPT, so you pretty much have a senior engineer right on your shoulder, right? If you leverage those tools, you can be more productive. And so that gives you a little bit more space to now be able to say, okay, I can keep my foot on the gas on my job search. I can be building out my portfolio, and I can be using some of these low-code, no-code tools to build much more robust applications than I might have been able to build before. And so I think just even in the last year, the technology, the having Chat GPT to be able to like help you through when you hit those sticking points is really making it a lot more possible for a person that's really focused to take advantage of the ability to freelance. So the other piece that's still tough, there's not a solution that I'm aware of yet out there in the marketplace, is you got a lot of people that are hiring freelancers that might not be sort of really savvy buyers of technology. So they can be really challenging clients, right? And so you have to get really good at not just managing clients, but coaching, not just managing the relationship, but coaching them and helping them to explain what they're really seeking. And you got to be a little bit more better at developing their ideas for them, because they're not always as good as expressing the details that you're going to need to build a site. And so again, as an early career developer, it's great experience, right? It gives you that chance to, really stretch. That's why I think developer is actually a good term. Sometimes people like to use software engineer. I actually use developer, I think is a term of endearment, because it means that you're taking ideas and kind of like you're developing a picture, right? You're increasing the focus of it, and it comes into focus, and you're helping to shape that process. And it's not just like they give you the instructions and you're snapping the Legos together, right? It takes a lot more sophistication for you to hear the client, listen to their requirements, and then create solutions and then actually implement the solution. So I think freelancing can give you some of that practice that you don't get. It's hard to get elsewhere, for sure. So definitely my thoughts have evolved over time.
So I invited two people to go over freelancing. Our very first guest is Memo Monke. He's freelancer turned engineering manager with us here at Creating Coding Careers. Welcome, Memo. And our second guest is Mr. Andrew Gonzalez, who also was a professional freelancer for some time. I'd like to start with you, Andrew. If you can kind of walk us through how you transitioned into tech, and what was it like looking for that first job, and what was that point in time that you decided, you know what, maybe I got to give freelancing a chance?
Um, First of all, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, well,
Um, I originally came from the banking industry. I worked for a big bank. I was a collection manager for about 10 years. And then, I wanted to do something a little different. So I started web developing. I went to a coding boot camp. Um, that was about 7 years ago. And that place really opened the world up for me. I had no idea about the tech world and about any of it. So it was really nice to kind of go in there and learn and really just just have a new skill that I found really exciting. Um, and then of course after boot camp, it's a little hard to get a job. Most places don't want to hire a new developer. Um, so I kind of started jumping on Craigslist and just replying to as many people as I could. And I kind of knew my skills were a little limited, just because I was so new to the world. So I, try to take jobs where I can do with HTML and CSS, just, kind of simple jobs. And then I kind of just branched off from there. And then just kind of seeing how WordPress and Shopify was really big, I kind of started focusing more on those in the front end section. And, luckily for me, Shopify is really big right now, and most companies use it. So, yeah.
how about you, Memo? Memo was our guest speaker a couple of weeks ago. Can you remind us how you got into tech and how you decided to take that first step into freelancing?
Sure. So I started well, my background is similar to Andrew's, with the exception that I never got into any bootcamp. Like I just self-taught, I guess. And then to me, it was basically like I needed experience. Well, it was not so much in my plans to like land a job as it is. I was planning on freelancing and then keep it going until I grew enough to hire people and so on. Um, but then, like, yeah, my first clients, or my first like real life projects, uh, they were it was basically just, I was hungry to learn. I was hungry to practice. I just uh, basically did what I had to do. Like I even and I'm not encouraging anyone to do this on any way, but I even like gave out a few websites for free, things like that. Like I just wanted to have some like experience under my belt. Um, and well, that's how I started. And then, as we were talking earlier, like you'll eventually, as you're doing it, like if you're good enough, I guess, people will start, like recommending you and things like that. And like as we were saying, you'll eventually gonna hit that wall where a customer is gonna ask you something that you don't know. And I think the word we used was fearless. Like you have to be fearless in that sense. Like you have to, well, if that's what you're aiming for, like you gotta just try it out and learn how to do it. Like you'll learn as you go. Trust me. If you have to, and if you're good at coding, and if you like it, if you're like passionate enough, you'll jump any bridge for sure. Like you'll get there.
So when I reached out, Andrew, I just met Andrew just yesterday. I was looking for freelancers because I really wanted to, tap into their brain and figure out how they all get started. In one of the messages you sent me, Andrew, you said it's hard selling yourself when you don't really know the extent of your skills. Can you walk us through that? Like maybe that your first client, when you're interacting with them, you got someone who says finally, trusts you enough to say, yeah, I would like you to build something for me. And maybe any self-doubt or like internal thinking of, wow, do I really have the skills to do this? If you can remember that first client, like what were their asks, and did your skills match those asks?
That's a tough question. I remember my first real, big client was a makeup company. I had no idea about any makeup or anything, and it was my first full website build on Shopify, which I had no real experience with. So yeah, definitely, I felt like I was way in over my head, but I just decided to kind of take it, go in one day at a time and just do the best that I can and just figure out whatever needs to be done and just move forward, just plant my feet down. And like Memo said, we have to be fearless. So that's kind of what kind of helped me kind of get over that, was just kind of, take it one day at a time, do the best I can, try to, make it look just like the design. Yeah. But it worked. I mean, the website was a success. It was big. It made some sales. And then that was my first real piece of my portfolio. I was kind of jumping with 2 feet in, and I was very proud of it. So then, every job you go to after that is like, well, look what I did. Look what I did. And, so you kind of start building on those. And, as you conquer that fear, you're like, okay, maybe I can do more. Maybe I can do this. So yeah, that kind of helps bring up your confidence as well.
And you shared with me there was actually some discrepancies, right? They had a lot to ask. I think they were asking for stuff like maybe some design work, and you had to kind of learn some new technologies to provide that service. And they wanted maybe search engine optimization, and this was not under your skill set just quite yet. But so what did you do? I mean, you just pretty much had to take a weekend off and just dive right in and start learning all this stuff. Is that about right?
Yeah, that was pretty much it. They said, hey, can you design banners? I think that's how it started. And I had never touched Photoshop or Illustrator, so luckily I had a few friends who were designers, and they were able to kind of teach me the ropes. And I got a Udemy course on, to kind of give me a quick learn into Photoshop and a little bit of Illustrator. And I was able to kind of put stuff together. And, you kind of take, like you said, a weekend off, and you kind of just have to grind it and figure it out. And then, once you get up to a certain point, you're like, okay, I could probably do this. I could probably get up to this point. And then as, like you start learning the fundamentals, and then as you take more jobs and more people, they ask more of you, you kind of tend to push those limits, and you kind of tend to get a little better. So yeah.
How about you, Memo? Do you remember that first client you got?
Oh yes, I was lucky enough to, to me, that was a big coincidence. I mean, I was looking hard to get that first client, but it came out that I moved into this apartment, and my neighbor, the guy who lived in front of me, he basically he sells software, but he doesn't. Well, they have a platform, like a backend as a service platform, and we basically built an extension. It was a how do you call those? GPS tracker company, logistic company.
Yep.
So we built a dashboard. We everything was new. So and that's another thing. Whenever you feel you're ready to go, as soon as you start getting real clients, they're not gonna meet your skill set or your stack. They're just gonna you're just gonna go for it. So what happened to me was we created this app as a like a dashboard, and it was pretty cool in the sense that the functionality of it was it shows some alerts if the driver was stealing gas from the truck, things like that. It was very, very useful for the company as it is. But then the cool thing for us was that they have clients all over America as a continent. So right now, my very first application, it's running all over Latin America as we speak, and that's kind of, it's a good sensation. It's a great feeling whenever you achieve that first big client or big project, or but then having it really, I don't know how to express that feeling about creating something, and then for the world to be able to use it, that's something huge.
Yeah, proud, very prideful, I would imagine.
For sure.
So I would imagine the best way to do it, just get started, maybe is to ask friends, family members, people who have businesses that you may know of, and offer your services, and maybe build them up a website. But there's also these platforms that exist, of course. They have Fiverr, Upwork. Andrew, I think you mentioned you looked at Craigslist. Can you tell us the pros and cons of some of those platforms, or some of your experiences with those platforms? Maybe Andrew, if you could start off.
Yeah. I found more success in Craigslist just because there were a lot more local people. And of course, as your resume gets bigger, more people will answer you. At first, you kind of have to, there's on Craigslist, I found a lot of ads where they were looking for, people that were new, junior developers or people that were just starting off their company and they needed, someone to just kind of help them and walk them through some pieces. So I found, more value in Craigslist as opposed to Fiverr, where, I mean, yeah, you put up your profile, but I mean, you're kind of competing against, hundreds of profiles, and they can do it way cheaper. So, not to discourage anyone, of course, because I mean, there are a lot of people that make a great living just off of Fiverr, but yeah, just more local. Craigslist was just a better value for me, just overall.
How about you, Memo? I think you mentioned there was another platform that you used. It wasn't Fiverr or Upwork. It was something different, but it was similar. What was that one? What was your experience like?
Yeah, that was Workana, I think it was called. I don't know if it's still up there, but like to me, the biggest pro they can find there, like on those platforms, is that you like you can get a good sense on what the market is asking for. Like you can go ahead and just review the projects they are publishing, and you can get a good sense on because those most of the times those projects that they are going to be very specific in terms of, we want you to work with these technologies. We like, whenever it comes to those platforms, usually that's how it goes, or at least that was my experience. So it gave me a good sense on what languages should I be learning or aiming to. And then when it comes to the cons, I guess the biggest would be, like, you're competing against people who's willing to charge $100 for a website just to learn. So to me, that's one of the biggest cons that it has when it comes to those platforms.
Can you walk us through, like, what is it like? Say you're knocking on doors, you finally get somebody who says, okay, I'm willing to take a chance on you. I want you to build this site. What does that look like from the time they say yes to the time you start working on the website? What are some of the things you have to start thinking about as a business person? Obviously, you're going to require certain assets from them to get started. Can you walk us through what that looks like, that first, initial transaction between you and the client?
Sure. Yeah, I guess the biggest challenge is what you just said, like for you to get all the assets from them. So what I usually like to do is so during this initial stage, it's it's either they have an outdated site, but most of the times they're going to provide you, these are the websites that I like, or I saw this one and I like this part of it, things like that. So what I usually try to do as soon as they say yes is I try to go and, start with the mock-up stage real quick, because the sooner that you have something together for them to, to like a starting point, like that's the easiest thing for me to do. But obviously I don't use any real assets, and I just start, like, as soon as I have it ready, I'll send it and start pushing to get those documents. Like, hey, if you want to see these, after your feedback, if you want to see those changes and have real data, just start sending me content, like text content and images and real videos and so on. Well, that's whenever the website requires those kind of assets, right? Because sometimes they'll just say, go ahead and get some stock images and use them. So that's going to rely on the client. But to me, like, that's where all the friction happens, because after that, like, and during that, back and forward of you talking to your client, like, that's where you like, after all that, you have enough information to just get heads down. And if it's a website, like, it's not going to take you like a month, or like, it's going to be a short time for you to have a final version, if you want to call it somehow. So I guess after that first 1 or 2 weeks, where you get all the content, like, that's it. Like, after that, it's just a matter of you doing the code, like doing the website as it is, and well, everything that comes after that, like, to me, after that, it's just the opportunity for you to sell more services or things or updates for the page or things like that. But yeah, like, the beginning is, I guess, that's the thing that I was not prepared for. like I thought that clients were going to be ready to do that. Like if you're looking for a website, you would think that they have at least an idea on what the words are going to be and so on, but usually they don't.
How about you, Andrew? I'm assuming your process is similar, but I remember you brought up one specific thing, and it was a business thing that you learned. It was like a lesson learned. Like, okay, before I get started, I got to make sure I take care of business first. And it was coming from like a disaster story that you kind of shared with me. And this was something you learned afterwards. What are some of the things you have to prep business wise before you start doing work for somebody?
I think really just sitting down and outlining every process, just sitting down and going, okay, what is my first step? What is my second step? What do I need? What are reasonable timelines? I think is all important to set so that you can set the expectation for the client. Because I mean, just like Memo said, like they don't really know what they want and they don't have anything ready. So when you say, okay, this is going to take 3 weeks, a week is going to be to collect all the information that I need. The second week is going to be, putting it together, giving a rough draft, and then et cetera, et cetera. So, but I think kind of outlining and making sure that everything is set in stone and you guys understand each other is really important before anything begins, because you don't want to waste time. And unfortunately, I've had to take a client to court, and that gets really messy really fast. So, and I mean, it just kind of sets you back, because as a freelancer, you depend on your jobs and, okay, I'm going to get paid from this job. I'm going to get paid from this job. And if somebody doesn't pay as a starting freelancer, that really sets you back. So just make sure you have all your ducks in a row before you sit down. Okay, and then you sign a form, you collect a check, make sure you get your payments, make sure you hold on to the work. All that's really important.
And so making sure you have some kind of stipulation and maybe a contract you might have with these people is, I think you mentioned something like, from now on, I'm going to make sure I get paid some kind of percentage up front before I start any work. I think that's the lesson that you shared with me based on like a specific disaster story you had. Is that about right?
Yeah. One of my friends told me a long time ago when I first started, he goes, if you can't walk away from any job, you shouldn't be a freelancer. So I think that's great advice, because at any time, for any reason, you have to walk away from a job, you have to be okay to do that, whether it's financial or whatever. You have to be ready to just say, okay, I can't do this anymore because sometimes the clients are difficult, or sometimes they're going to drag you out 3 months because they really don't know what they want. So all that, like I said, is really important to have in the contract and kind of have that understanding.
Got a question.
If I can jump in here.
Yeah, go for it, Mike. Sorry, man. The floor is yours anytime you want it.
So I think that's super important. I want to also go back to one thing that you mentioned before that I think is a really awesome tip, Andrew, and that is like, it can feel like a crowded space, especially when you start going on to some of the platforms. Like you can feel like you're competing with the whole world. But I think you hit on a good thing when you're like, it's hard at first because like you're not going to know what your thing is, what you're most interested in. But if you try and find your niche, try and find something that you kind of enjoy doing, and like let's say it's like everybody's doing WordPress sites, but you like Webflow, so you go super deep on Webflow, right? Or Shopify, like whatever it is, like try and find your angle that like kind of makes you different, that makes you unique. And you can't always pick that work, even though you want to try to, because that way you're not going to be like, oh, this week I got to learn PHP, and next week I got to focus on Rust, and then the week after that I got to learn some Java. That becomes old really fast. But you hit on a good point, which is like Craigslist. And so I think the example that you use with Craigslist, the takeaway is not necessarily like, hey, everybody should go to Craigslist, which is not bad. Like you can go to Craigslist, you can find local things, but it's something I actually had a really tough time with when I first started, which is just thinking outside of the box as to where you can go to find clients. And oftentimes like the people that you're going to want to build like, simple websites for, they might not have any web presence. So you can't always expect that they're going to know to go to Fiverr, or they're going to know to go to Upwork, or they're going to know to go to Craigslist. So sometimes you have to like everywhere you go, you have to be selling yourself. You have to have your card, get your business card with your like URL or your QR code. And literally every small business you walk into, you can like, while you're there, you're waiting for your IPO, right? Your, Hawaiian barbecue, you're waiting at, a store for, it's a auto shop. Look up the website and be like, oh, they don't have like, they just have a basic Wix website. Doesn't look like they got a good call to action, and like pitch them, and you'll get good at like pitching like, hey, is there any work that you guys might have? Like any way I can help you with like your digital presence or, being online. And they might tell you like, oh yeah, we don't really pay attention to our website. Well, why is that? Like, don't you think you could make more money if you had people coming to you, if you had a better presence, all that kind of stuff? Really start like always be selling. And if you're always out there trying to like convince people that like they could do a better job with the technology they have, you're going to really stand out, because I guarantee you, like when you go to the dry cleaners and you're like, hey, do you guys have a website? And they're just like, oh, we don't pay attention to it. There's your opportunity, right? He's not competing with 5 other bids for someone to like build him a nice, just like a brochureware, just a website with his contact information. But like, it's super helpful, right? You can explain to them like, hey, you're showing up on Google and people are going to click that little link to look at your website. And like, you want to have times that you're open, you want to have like a really good looking basic web page, and it's going to drive you more business, and it's going to save you money a lot. It's going to make you money in the long run. So I think you hit on a good point, Andrew, with like, just try and also be where other people aren't when you're like promoting yourself. And that's everywhere you are, right? Everywhere you are, you're not competing with somebody else. And then the other piece that you just hit on is like the contract is super important. I know when I started freelancing, after I jokingly say this, but it's true. After every deal I had, I added something to my contract. So don't feel like your contract has to be perfect and set in stone. You're going to learn something from each engagement, and whatever you learn from that engagement, make the modifications, right? Like I learned early on, I think what Andrew did, and we all learn, is like someone's going to burn you at some point. So you start creating milestones, right? And you start maybe adjusting your milestones. I used to always get in a scenario early on where people would be like, we'd be in like a standoff at the end of a project, and they'd be like, okay, I need you to pay the last milestone. And like, well, I don't want to pay the last milestone until you turn over the website. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to turn over the website until you pay your last milestone, right? So I eventually had to figure out like to not put a whole bunch of money. I didn't take like half the money up front, half the money on the completion, because like they're not going to want to pay the other half, because they're going to think you're going to like just disappear as soon as they pay you the rest of the money. So it has to be an inconsequential enough money, to Andrew's point, where you'll just walk away. You'd be like, okay, well, if you don't want to pay me the last 10%, then I'm going to leave and you're not going to get your files. So like, you already paid this much, pay the last 10%, put the files on your server, you're good to go, right? And like, I think learning those takeaways from every scenario means that even when you have a bad experience, because you'll have bad experiences, right? You're going to be dealing with a lot of new product owners that just don't know, right? They don't know that some of the things they're asking for aren't reasonable, right? They're going to like say, oh, you should be able to build this, this, and this. I see it on this website. And they don't realize that like took millions of dollars to build. That it was literally hundreds of engineers spending thousands of hours. And they just think like, oh, well, you should be able to do it because I see it all over the place. And it's like, well, some things are expensive. Some things that look easy are hard. Some things that look hard are easy. And it's not easy for a layperson to like kind of decide that, right? And so they will often be unreasonable and not just seem unreasonable. And like, so both sides will kind of feel sometimes like, okay, you're not being reasonable. And then they'll feel like you're not there. They'll feel like you're not being reasonable. But at the end of the day, like just having that contract in place, even if it's simple, and then you add on to it as you experience things, is like biggest pro tip. Like if you take anything away, make sure you right away make a clear milestone. Don't ever feel intimidated by someone because they will try this. They will say like, I don't pay deposits, right? And maybe some company, it might be some business, and they'll say, well, we don't pay deposits. We only pay when you release a milestone or whatever. Then what I used to do is like, okay, cool. I'll set up my developer environment. And once my developer environment is set up and I have a staging server for you to look at, you will pay me something, right? And that became like my first milestone for those people that were like, we don't pay deposits. We only pay on deliverables. So as long as you take something from each experience, the process will get less brutal. But there's a big learning curve for most people when you start freelancing, because you'll make mistakes early on that will be very painful, right? It will like really hurt your pride sometimes. You really feel sometimes like people are being disrespectful or they don't trust you. And you're like, I'm an honest person. Like, I'm not trying to rip you off, but like, they're just afraid that like, they don't know you, you don't know them, and you don't have a working relationship yet. So it can cause a lot of those like, conflicts. And especially when you're new and you're not sure, like, are they taking advantage of me? Are they paying me fairly? Like all of those kinds of like fears that you might have. But it will hopefully get easier if you learn something from each project, right? It should get smoother over time.
So I think Mike just answered your question, Callie. Callie's question was, what did litigation teach you that informs you how you currently work with your current clients? So I think you just answered that perfectly, Mike. Thank you. Andrew, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think Mike kind of hit it on the head when he said, just kind of make sure that, you don't just take 50 here and then 50 at the end. You kind of stagger everything appropriately and kind of like make sure you make milestones that are comfortable for you and them. And a lot of times, unfortunately, I mean, people tend to kind of look for those, young developers and take advantage of them. So if they say like only on deliverables, that's a red flag already. So I think just kind of being aware of what red flags are and what clients are, the little tricks to kind of get work out of you. I think being aware of all that is really important.
All right, I got to drop off. It's been great. I want you guys keep this conversation going. If you're in the comments, please drop us a message. We'll respond to it. We'll get to your questions. We'll answer as many as we can while we can keep Andrew and keep Memo. So Memo's on the payroll, so he'll stay. But Andrew, we want to be respectful of your time. So please, take advantage of these two professionals and ask as many questions as you guys can get into the chat.
Thanks, Mike. Memo, same question to you. Anything you'd like to add to that? I remember we had talked about this a long time ago when we started talking about how you started in freelancing and how you started developing contracts for yourself. We started interacting with clients. Anything you'd like to add to what Andrew and Mike said about this topic?
No, just reassure that that's totally the way to go. Like at the very whenever you're starting, it's hard to say no. Like you're fighting for that yes, like for that client to say yes, and then I tend to give out a little bit more than what I should, and then it comes to a time where you just gotta say no. I mean, I saw that someone posted what are the red flags that we should be looking for, and yeah, that's a whenever those, I guess we'll talk about them, but whenever those red flags are turned on, don't go with your gut. Like if you see everything turning red, don't do it, man. Don't do it. But yeah.
How about you, Andrew? Someone starting out in freelancing, what are some of the red flags to watch out for?
Them just unnecessarily pushing you. Also, I noticed that one phrase that'll immediately make me not take the job is when someone says, I could have done this myself, but I don't have the time. When someone says that, I'm 100% out, because
not respectable of your time at all.
Belittle you, everything you do, and they won't respect your time because they can do it so much better, supposedly, so that's one phrase to watch out for, big time.
Yeah, great point. Great point.
The I need it for yesterday, it's also a very common scenario. Like people wanting, I need this and I need it for tomorrow. You're gonna have a hard time. Like if it happens to you, which could happen, let's say because you don't want to let the guy go, you say, well, I think it'll take me, I don't know, 8 weeks, but he wants it in 6 weeks. So you say yes. And then if something goes wrong, you're going to have a very, very hard time with those people.
It's going to be a rough project to be working with something like that. It sounds like. Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
I have another question. This is coming from our very own apprentice, Anna Davis. Have you tried Upwork? Maybe if you can compare and contrast some of the platforms that are out there. I know Craigslist was mentioned. We mentioned Fiverr and Upwork. Have you tried different platforms, and is there one that you prefer over the other? Any of you, either one of you?
I haven't tried Upwork. I've tried Fiverr. I haven't really had any success with it. Yeah.
And you, Memo?
Same goes for me. I've tried that Workana, haven't tried Upwork. Okay. Then I also saw this it's freelancer.com, which is pretty it's solid. I want to say it's one of the oldest. But yeah, that's not my preferred way to get offers or jobs. Mm-hmm.
Got another question for you guys. This is coming for one of our pre-apprentices, Misael Bolanes. In terms of pay, how do you determine a fair amount?
That's a hard one. Super hard one.
Because I know when you first starting out, Memo, you mentioned that you might have to actually, start off a little bit low.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's would you give that advice?
Not necessarily, but I guess the biggest problem right there is since our work, or most of the time we try to, base our price like on an hour rate. Like when you're in an early stage, you're not going to be that good at estimating how much is it going to take for you to build anything, right?
Right.
So yeah, like that's a hard one. Like, I mean, in my case was like I just try it. I failed a few times, like it came to the point where I, like, if in my estimation I was going to take, I don't know, 4 weeks, I would say I'm going to take 6 weeks or 5 weeks, or like I would start giving me a little bit of wrong way in case that anything go, like, if anything went wrong. But yeah.
How about you, Andrew? What was your formula for determining and how much you're gonna put the sticker price on the job they're asking you to do?
I think taking a look at the company, is it a little hole in the wall? Is it a bigger company? I think that's kind of a factor. If you're just starting out and you just want something on your portfolio, I mean, that you kind of have to take that into consideration. And then also, what should this take? Is building this landing page, is it going to take me 50 hours as opposed to, should it only take me 20 hours? So I think really just sitting down and kind of like piecing out how long everything's going to take you, maybe adding a couple extra time to that.
So estimating is a scale that comes with time and experience, I would assume, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because I mean, you can't charge something that's going to take you 20 hours because you have no skills, and then someone that could do it in 2 hours.
Sure.
So you can't charge 20 hours for that. You have to be realistic, and like I said, especially depending on the type of company that you're working with, because a small mom and pop doesn't have $10,000 to throw for a new website.
Sure.
Yeah.
Got another question. This is coming for one of our apprentices. This is Ronald. Is it true that there's a lot of work for those specializing in WordPress and Shopify? I think, Andrew, this would be a perfect question for you because I think you had some experience specifically in these areas.
Yeah. Like I was saying earlier, I work for a marketing agency and all of their work is on Shopify. So Shopify has really blown up, and I would say probably about 80%, 90% of the stores that I see out there are all WordPress or Shopify, and occasionally a Wix store.
How about you, Memo?
Yeah, I would add to that comment that that's, again, in my experience, I ran into several clients who had so whenever these WordPress came into the game, a bunch of people, not developers, like they tried to enter this like the industry. They started building WordPress sites because it's easy to build them, right? But then, since they had no like other skills than that, because like they were just, most of them, they were just doing it to make some money with them, but then they just like abandoned the client at the end of the day. So if you're a WordPress developer, you're definitely going to be getting a bunch of clients, especially when it comes to websites, because most of them, and I guess this was the main reason for WordPress, like they want the ability to change anything on the, like in terms of the content of the page or picture here and there, things like that. Like that's one of the most known technologies for the customers, even if they don't know anything about developing or software or coding or whatever. Like they're most likely going to know WordPress, and most of the time, if they, I guess I was like 50-50. I would get I want a website, but the other 50% were like, I want a WordPress website, like directly from them, not by me recommending that.
So I have a question that may be depending on everyone's minds. Can you make a living off of becoming a freelancer? And, how good do you have to be? I'm sure just starting out, you're not going to be making a lot of money. So you have to build up your skill set to start, climbing up the charts as far as, the person to go to for websites on one of these platforms. What's your take on, did you do this for making money, or do you think this is a better vehicle for getting experience, or maybe a little bit of both? Memo, how about you?
Yeah, in my case, it was just it was more a matter of experience. Like to me, that was the reason behind everything that I was doing. Like I wanted to develop my skills as a developer. But then like I'm sure like you could create you can make a great living for sure because like it's just you know it's you can manage everything as you please, and as you start growing like you'll be able to charge more for your work and so on. So yeah, I think it's a good deal, but in my case like that was not my intention. Since I'm coming from a non-software developer, I was already in my 30s when I started, so I was like starting like really from scratch. I cannot um like it was not going to be viable for me to taking another route, like to try to get there by charging a lot and stuff. Like it was just not going to happen to me. So yeah.
How about you, Andrew? I know you did very well for yourself. You were in this space, freelancing for some time, so it sounds like you do pretty well for yourself. What's your take on that?
It's tough, especially at the beginning, just to kind of build your skill set and to kind of know what your niche is. But I mean, I don't think skill set necessarily has anything to do with it. I mean, if you only know HTML, CSS, there are a lot of people that charge, to build great emails, through MailChimp and stuff like that. So I think at any skill set, it's just really finding your niche and really knowing what you can do, and then really knowing how to like sell that to a customer and say, hey, I can optimize your website, for Shopify, and I'll charge you X amount of dollars. So, knowing how to do these things, kind of lets you hone in on certain clients and certain problems. It's not really clients, it's more like you're fixing their problems, because they don't care how good of a coder you are. They're more like, what can you do for me? So knowing those answers makes you a much better freelancer.
So is it safe to say, this is more for our pre-apprentices and our apprentices, they're all out there, they're looking for jobs. Freelancing might be a great way to get experience, but don't look to it as a way to, get rich and follow that as maybe a career path. Is that safe to say then?
I would agree. Yeah, most of it I would agree with what you're saying. Yeah. Definitely great way to get experience. Like definitely that's one of the best ways to do it. Yeah.
So other ways to gather experience, Memo and I were having this conversation a little earlier today, are obviously joining apprenticeships, internships. But nowadays, it seems like even the internships are super competitive. Like to get into an internship, it feels almost like you're applying for a job. And so one of the ways we're discussing is, well, if you think a little bit outside the box, you can actually create your own internship, right? You can find a company that you're interested in working for and approach them and explain to them, hey, I'm interested in building my React skills. And I would love to know if there's any way that I can work alongside, one of your senior developers and do just that. And there's actually several articles about how you go about doing just that. You definitely want to organize yourself, letting the company know these are the set of skills that I'm interested in learning. This is the amount of time I would like to spend with you obtaining these skills. And it seems like 9 times out of 10, these companies are willing to, extend at least that, allow you to actually learn from them. Do you guys have any experience with internships at all?
I don't have experience with any kind of internship.
No, I don't either.
So I was just digging in to see like, how do you become a freelancer? And there was an article that kind of explained, like, if you're looking for companies that are just starting out, might be a great way to go. And they describe, every time a company opens up, they're supposed to go ahead and post an article in a local newspaper, letting everybody know that they just opened up. And the article was talking about going after those types of companies that are just starting out, not kind of like knocking on doors and say, hey, my name is Andrew, my name is Memo. I'm a freelance developer. I would love to build a website for you guys. I just saw that you just opened up a business. Have either one of you tried that method of trying to, start gathering your client base?
Yeah, well, that's the way I got most of my clients. Like I was like constantly hunting for those kind of companies, or if I saw a company that it was in terms of social media that it was big enough, like for me to approach, like for them to afford a website, or like I would reach out. I would look for specifically those guys who went big enough as a business, but like they were still using a Gmail account for their email address, things like that. Like, or they don't have a website, like a live website, or they do have one, but it's super outdated. Like those were my favorite ones, because even though it's outdated, sorry, you at least have a bunch of resources to work from. Like you already know how they communicate and so on. So if you get that and present a like a beautiful version of that, like it'll be easier for you to connect, or for them to connect with with where you're showing.
And you were actually a little bit more aggressive, right, Memo? You were telling me, like, not only would I look for these companies, I actually start building a website for them without even contacting them. I'm gonna, I think, as you said, like a landing page. I'll build up a landing page and be like, hey, this is what your website looks now. Look what it can look like. Or maybe you just started your business. Would you like a website? This might be a little sample of what it could look like. That's
Right.
what I think you said you did, and that's kind of caught and started reeling them in from there, right?
Yeah, but it was not like I didn't created a real website, but a Figma prototype. So functional,
Okay.
like but it was just a Figma like dynamic prototype. That's what it was.
How about you, Andrew? Have you tried that knocking on doors approach, and how did you fare doing that?
Yeah, my buddy, I don't know if I should say his name, but my buddy Brian and I, we would pick like a street where there was a bunch of small businesses, and we would start at the one end, and we had flyers on a website, and we just walked down the street talking to every single business and trying to get them. And we'd say, hey, we'll build you a website for $500, a whole website. We just, just because we wanted to build a portfolio. And I mean, we probably did it for about, I would say for about 2 weeks, and we did not get one job from it. Nothing worked. It's just, I don't think people really take in from that, because I mean, they probably don't see you as professional enough, or you don't know what you're doing. But yeah, 2 weeks of pounding the pavement, talking to companies, setting up appointments, and at the end we had no luck.
So completely two different sides of the scale. It sounds like, Memo, that you tended to do fairly well, and that's how you kind of started up your business. And Andrew, sounds like that's kind of what diverted you into these other type of sites that you were building. So appreciate both of your perspectives on that. I want to go ahead and mention that. So Memo and I were talking about, this is a great topic. Of course, we want to push freelance work as a great way to build up your experience. Obviously, a lot of these companies that everyone's applying for nowadays is asking for at least a year of experience. On top of that, they'd like to see your portfolio. So how do you build that 1 year experience when no one's willing to give you a chance? So I asked Memo, what do you think about creating a series where you go over pretty much reliving how you went from, zero to hero, how you went from just having some skills and started going out there and marketing yourself, and decided to build a business out of this, and figuring out how to manage this business, how to start negotiating with your clients, how to use Figma to start wireframing these websites, showcasing those to them to actually start, interacting with them to see like where they want to go with the site. And finally, maybe even developing some kind of service contract once you were done with that site. So that's a series that Memo's going to be building out. It's going to be the Freelance Framework series. And starting in February, Memo's going to come back. We're going to go over the first episode of that series, and then he's going to branch off and create a whole new series going after just, how he became a freelance. So I would love for anybody who has any ideas or questions in that regards, you feel free to drop in any topics or comments on what you'd like to see in that series. And, Memo and I are going to build that out, and we will go ahead and showcase again that first show sometime in February. I'll let you know. Andrew, thank you so much for coming in and joining us. I know I just reached out to you yesterday, and I appreciate you on a last minute notice coming over and joining us. And Memo, thank you. I know you're busy, and you got a lot to do. You got to get back to work right now, 4 o'clock. I know you got a meeting. So thank you so much, both of you, for spending time with us and giving us a peek into what it was like getting into the freelance market in web dev. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you for having us.
All right, guys. Until next time, I'll see everybody next Friday. Everybody have a great weekend, and see you then.
Have a great one.
Bye.